It's March 27th, 2013, 5:30 financial management meeting. Looks like we've got a quorum present. Do I need a motion to start the meeting? No? Okay. Meeting started. Let's see, the first agenda topic's invocation. Mr. Klein, would you like to give one? Otherwise, I've got something prepared here.
Sure. Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day you've given us. Although our hearts are heavy for the shooting in Green Hills today, we ask you to be with the families, the school, the peoples of that community. We ask that these kinds of things stop and never return. We ask you to allow us to be wise with the people's money in Sumner County, and that the decisions made tonight will be the decisions that you want made. We ask this in Jesus' name.
Moving on. Thank you, David. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Do y'all want to add the vice chair or not?
Oh, yeah, good idea. How would we add that as an agenda topic at the end?
It's up to you. I mean, you can add it.
I can add it without a
item,
motion.
New business item, B, C, D, E, F.
Yeah, let's add it as that. So agenda topic F, please add vote for new vice chair.
All right, I make a motion, we accept the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. Recognition of the public. All right, since you're not on the committee anymore. All right, moving along. Approval of the minutes from our last meeting, September 12th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes. Moving down here, number 2, report of the committee chairman. I don't have anything lengthy prepared, but just want to thank David for all the hard work he's put into some of these future projections. I think it's going to be a good roadmap for the budgeting process, just to have eyes wide open for what decisions now and the trends those decisions will make over the next 5 years in the county. So as far as financial rigor, I think there's a lot in here as far as improving the decision making. I think this is a good tool to do that, and it's also a good tool for us to poke holes at, ask questions, challenge, because that's what future projections are. They're best guess, and the more challenge, the more rigor, the more minds behind it, the better they'll be and the easier they'll be for us to communicate. So that's all.
All right, no
Mr. Mayor?
report, sir.
All right, appreciate it. Eric, anything from you?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Report of the trustee. I believe we've got a few pages here. Dave, was this something you prepared for us?
Yes, did you ready for my report?
Yes, please. Sorry, I didn't see that on the agenda. Are you on?
Oh, yeah, I'm the reported finance director's next.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
Okay. Everybody should have a copy of this. We passed out a better copy. There's one in your agenda, but this one's easier to read. Make sure everybody's got a copy, if they brought their own agenda. Yeah, it's much clearer. We
Oh,
ran
yeah,
it
thank you.
again.
Yeah, that's better. Versus
And I'm gonna turn off the lights because it's a little hard to see in here. This thing's gonna be small anyway. First, I'll just talk about the sheet. The sheet here has your historical data for several years. If you look at it by the columns, you're estimated, and it actually projects forward. The current rules for the county commission is you're to have one budget year and 2 estimated, which would be the 24, 25, and 26. This actually goes out 2 more years. Once you start the trends, you kind of can continue them relatively easy. So I went out several years to kind of give you an idea. The first just has all, if you go down the first set's under revenues, this is just your major revenues. I've got them compacted in just for everybody's viewing because there's about 200 revenues hid down into those, and this is just the general fund only. We can, if another meeting you want to, explore into each individual revenue, but there's a lot of them, there's a lot of data that goes into them. The same thing if you go under expenditures, it shows general government, but the general government has the mayor, the election commission, various items. Every one of these has multiple departments and thousands of line items. Everything in here is based on linear projections as far as trends, adjusted for things that I knew about, such as the new courthouse and things you could relatively estimate that are going to change. We didn't capture a few things, for instance, which would be something more for the budget committee. The sheriff's department trend was high, but that's because they've been adding SRO officers for new schools for several years. They started out with, I think, 4 or 5, and we're up to 46 or 7 since I've been here. With the school growth versus the SROs, you wouldn't expect that to continue, so some of these trends are probably a little bit high. If you look here, and this is one of the ones you're going to want to focus on, if you go down almost to the bottom and it says impact on unassigned fund balance. That's very important. You've got several types of fund balance. One is your restricted, which means it's restricted by legislation or constitution, and the county commission can't easily use it. Then you've got committed fund balance, which the county commission's committed and they could uncommit it and assigned. But your most important is your unassigned fund balance, and if you look at this sheet, going across right here is your unassigned fund balance. These are your actual as of 22. This is your estimated as of 23, and this is your estimates going forward. This number here is very important. If you notice on 23, we're estimating that you're probably going to, unless something changes, you're going to pick up a little fund balance. 24, based on current trends, revenues and expenditures, we think you're going to be back to the point back in here where you started to break even. And this is the reappraisal year where we think if some of the trends do not change and revenues and expenditures follow their current course, you're going to start dipping significantly into your fund balance. But as something Collins pointed out, these trends are very susceptible to small changes making big differences. So if you go down into here, and I'm going to try to keep this in the view. For instance, if you come down here, this is your local taxes. If we were just to boot up your local taxes for 1 year, 2%, that would pick up $907,000 for your fund balance.
So I noticed for 2023, local taxes did go up, or is projected to go up pretty significantly. Was there a rate change? Was there
were
a
several
new source?
Mm-hmm. There were several pennies taken from debt service for things such as the 386 overpass, and I think it's around $1.2 million for the fire departments, and then there were some changes for salaries too that was moved into there.
It's assumed that those pennies stay within that.
No, actually, we've already discussed that in the budget committee. The $1.2 million for the fire department's assumed to go back out, and the money for 386. But they've also assumed bringing in 2 cents to get rid of half of from the debt service in the budget committee to get rid of half of the amount for the COVID-19 payments that are paid from ARPA funds. And then they're also talking about moving, I think it's an odd amount of pennies over to cover opening the new Justice Center.
Okay.
So those are counted in there. So you actually, it moved up and down. And if you look at the line under it, license and permits, that one, we're having a really good year for things such as building permits. Building permits, we do not think is going to continue that path based on the current trends. Talking to them upstairs and actually knowing about the interest rates, we don't think it's going to continue. So we try to capture some of the trends we knew about, looking up different things, so they will change significantly. But if you look here, just a 2% change in that trend will make a 900. So if we assume that changes. Copy. Just to say we assume that happens for every year we're off 2%, then that would bring in an additional $5.6 million alone just by changing those. The same thing can be said about expenditures. So let's get big expenditures. Like if we go down and we say public safety, we missed it, and you're going to give an extra 2% to public safety just in 1 year. That would affect your fund balance by $600,000. If we did that for several years, it'd be over that period of time about $4.1 million if you increased it by that much. And the same can be said if we decreased it, say you took 2% off of public safety per year. We go the other direction quite quickly. So if you look by making small changes And any of these numbers, because of its size, will actually have a significant impact. So that's one of the reasons I put these down here, to be able to adjust them, because one, we may want to adjust them. And then number two is to actually make sure that everybody takes any projection, especially the further you move into the future, with a grain of salt. Because any kind of change in those patterns and/or factors we know can have a very significant impact on the future models. So just to recap, just a 2% change every year, a permanent 2% change in public safety would actually change that about $4 million upward. Does anybody have any questions about the, and I just got the high level in here, I don't have it prepared to fold out and look at individual revenues today, or departments.
Just curious, what do you have collectability at?
On the next year, for the current year, I think I have it at 97 probably.
What is it traditionally been?
It's been the last couple of years running about 97.9, 97.8, but if you go back to like 13, it was running at 96 something, and the further you go back in time, we've had a really good collectability since 2013 for about the last 10 years. And there's a couple of things. One, the trustee now takes partial payments, has helped a lot, and then we've had a pretty good economic run for that period too. So next year, the 3% is probably a conservative low, but if you went back to 13, it would actually be high. But that's the numbers we're running. And then also, if you think 24, those numbers were just based on trend changes. They're not actually got any kind of tax rolls loaded in at this point, because we're still getting the data on those. And then there's a lot of assumptions about the economy in here too. The economy will not be quite as robust as it currently is. That's why you see things such as this.
Can you goal seek 2025 local taxes to see what percent increase that would have to be to get us back to a, running positive again,
Let's
a
just
million
say-
to 2 million a year in perpetuity?
I'll just try 105, see what it does. About breaks even at 105. Pretty good guess.
But what would it need to be to keep like 2028?
You
from
need
being-
another increase. Because the expenses were increasing at a faster rate, you're gonna have to have, I don't think it'll be that much again, but it may be. Whoa, what did I hit? It went back up. It didn't go back up either. So you'd have to have.
Okay.
Because it changes the base, you have to do the percentages each year to kind of capture them, but, yeah, you're looking somewhere maybe 106.5 would actually capture, which that's a rounded number, we have it rounded in. But it's kind of like, if you're gonna continue on the current pattern, it would have to follow a pattern pretty close to the, tax changes in the last reappraisals. But as I'm saying,
15
one
to
thing
20.
one thing that is way off is, and we know it, it'll be something budget committee may want to look at, public safety is going to be a high trend, because if you go back, since I've been here, they've put massive amount of SRO officers in the schools, so it's keep them up. Right now, you've got a SRO officer for every school except for, I believe, the new middle school. So unless we're going to grow schools at that rate, you're not going to see that big rate of SRO officers. But it still won't make that full impact, but it will help deaden that some. As I'm saying, these are conservative revenue projections also, is something to point out. We didn't max out revenues, what we think. So I think they're gonna be better than anything we're looking at.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of the finance director real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Apologies, first off, apologies for being tardy here, got caught in traffic. Does this also account for the ARPA funds that we're burning off? Is that included in the uptick in revenue or in expenditures here?
It's increased in the uptick in revenue because we've already discussed for 2020,
Yep.
what's going to 24, that's what brought us back up to there. It has not been discussed in the other year, but that's a good point. When I was looking at it, because of the cost of the SRO, I did not pull back in the cost of the second half of the ARPA, which is about what's left on it, probably about If you do it this year, you're gonna have about 1.4.
Yeah.
So if you take that compared to the cost of those SROs, it's,
So
the
it's-
SROs are still quite a bit more.
Right,
So it helped deaden part of that effect.
yeah.
So a lot of those things we didn't capture because we knew they were gonna lean against other things.
And I think this is captured, because I looked at this earlier. Does this capture the additional revenues that we should have at least open? It's not additional revenues, but the additional free pennies that we have that will be rolling off for debt service this year and next year.
See, this is general fund only, so what I did is I changed the rate to the 56 cents.
Okay.
And that's what's in there
Gotcha.
perpetually.
Gotcha.
So
That's
debt
the
service, if
jump
we
from
did,
22 to 23 on the
Gotcha.
local
and because
taxes.
of the amount of time, and
Gotcha.
we'll have it done before the budget's done, we'll have a similar one like this for debt service when, it'll be a lot less complex and a lot less time consuming. But we
Got it.
kind of honestly ran out of time to get any more.
No,
right now.
those, I remember looking at this, and those were my two questions, so.
Right.
So the one should deaden it or reduce, I mean, the big takeaways that I have off of this are the additional expenditures for SROs is gonna be it's gonna be in our favor, because that has increased the spend trajectory. And we
Right.
won't, but working against us simultaneously is the courthouse, which we have not yet.
What you did discuss moving the 1.4 pennies, and it's gonna get most of that courthouse, so.
Right.
The thing I did not put in here is also recovering any money for Facebook. I didn't do that because
Yeah,
we don't
that's
have, we don't have all the courthouse in here, and we don't have all the ARPA accounted for. So I think those playing with each other, you're going to be, you know, where I show in the 8 million, if you continue that trajectory, I think you're realistically looking at that number being 4.5 to 6 million. It's high. Unless something significantly changes, it's high if we start accounting for those, but as I'm saying, the model's gonna have to be refined, and this is the first shot, and
Right.
it probably needs a committee and another 50 hours on it, to be honest,
I get it.
to get all those factors in.
Thanks for entertaining my questions, that was it.
Is there, is Toby's stuff under the other operations? Is that where you're,
No, he's in the highway department, we haven't looked at it in this one.
it's not in here?
This is just the general fund. You have
Oh,
the-
okay.
So you have a general fund, a courthouse and jail maintenance fund, a drug control fund, a highway fund, a capital fund with a bunch of sub-funds, what am I missing? And a debt service fund.
Okay.
Now, there's some other funds that doesn't get budgeted or they're dealt with here, which is like the drug task and the DA,
Okay.
but those are less complex, and we'll have those prepared before the budget gets very far. But right now, we're gonna try to focus back on making, I guess it's the May 1st, the May deadline for the main budget right now.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We can circle
And then
back.
I anticipate, and that's what I was telling them at, if we look at the rules, it says you have the current year budget in 2 more years. This one actually passes that 2 more years past that requirement. And I think this right here is what I would recommend. We take off the fund balance and have this as your long-term planning sheets.
Or say that last part again?
And, you know, where it shows the change in fund balance, it says impact on unassigned, where it's 0 down on that very bottom, the very bottom.
Oh, yes.
That's just for this modeling. If you're on Excel, if we remove that one row, then this right here would be a good long-term planning sheet for your budget to look
Yeah.
at. It actually goes 2 years past where you're at, but this would be what I'd recommend for the budget committee to look at some of the big assumptions, and then during the year and the financial management start refining some of these assumptions down. Because it's probably a long-term process to refine all those assumptions. There were several of them I had to make, and I made them based on historical, but you've got to think it's a very different commission, the majority change.
No, but I mean, that's the right path to start there. Because I mean, that's basically what the thrust of the discussion is going to be, right? We're doing this, we need to do this.
There's a disparity between the growth speed of your revenue and expenditure, and it's about 2%. So if you think of a 2% compounding
Yep.
on a smaller number of the revenue versus the expenditure, the larger number, you end up with these, over time, these wide gaps.
Yep.
The only way to do it is to change one or the other.
And we have a lot more control over the expenditure one than we do it on the revenue side.
And just like I was showing everybody a minute ago, small changes, like if we change public safety to 98 all the way across, is gonna alleviate half of it. So these right here are long-term projections that are very susceptible to the economy, assumptions, and changes that you don't make that happens, and changes that the commission make. They all
Yeah.
have large impacts. But they are a good planning tool. Does
Do we need
anybody
a motion or anything for that, or just?
anybody have any questions?
clear as mud as,
It's a good start for long-term planning.
awesome. Appreciate it, great update. We can just move on to the next agenda topic, right?
The next one, if we go to page 6, is going to have your debt schedule, debt structure, and I will explain it. First, just the changes on page number 7, if you go over there. And then I will go on, and Colin had 2 questions. One, the debt structure, and number 2, how is the interest rates affecting us? And the first one is very easy on your debt structure. If you go to page number 2, it looks like this. And then I'll give you the good news. On the far right is your debt payments, which is interest and penalty. If you look at that first one, 36.6, the next year 31, and the next one is 21.4 for several years until it drops down to about 16. So that's your debt structure. The other good news is I'm a big proponent against variable rate debt, so the county has 0 variable rate debt. So any changes to this debt structure can only be changed in one of 2 ways. One is you issue new debt, or 2, you wait about 2 years from now and we start calling some of the debt. There is some savings there. Your first call would be, I think the face of the thing's about 5%. With inflation at 8 and the debt at 5, that's kind of a thought process. Do you even really want to call debt at that point? Number 2, I had a whole bunch of these sheets in here, but I will just read to you kind of the highlights of what you've got here, and it'll give you an idea. I'll give you the big highlight. In their 3.79, the all true and the interest is somewhere between 3.79, 3.77, and 3.74. It varies. So, for instance, if you wanted to issue $30 million worth of new debt, the all-in interest rate would be 3.79% and $2.1 million a year over 20 years. I'm going to read you these, and then we're going to go to the $100 million one, and I want to give you a comparison of how it's changed. $50 million at the 3.77% is about $3.5 million a year. $100 million at 3.74% is about 6.95% a year. Now let me give you a comparison of how that's changed. Back in 2019, on actually June 24th, 2019, we issued $103 million at 2.99 compared to the 3.77 for 20 years. And it cost you $6.92 million versus the $6.95 million a year it would cost you now for $100 million. So you've lost probably about $5 million worth of borrowing capacity on the same revenue stream. If we look into 2020, when rates got better, we issued 102.7 at 1.572%, and it was about $6 million a year for almost $103 million. So really right now to get that same 102.7, it's going to cost you about $1 million more a year over 20 years. So that's how your rates have really changed. And over time, they vary up and down. If we went back to 2015, they're 2.86 all-in rate. 2019, we got about 2.9. 2020 was an extremely low year, got 1.5. In 2021, we got 1.7. And right now, you're looking at 3.7. One point of disclosure, I did exclude from all those numbers I gave you refinancing, because refinancing are very short and very low and would not be comparable because we have no refinanceable debt at this point. But that kind of caps you back to get the same $100 million is going to cost you almost $1 million more a year at this point than at our lowest point.
So I have a question back on, I guess it's page 7 of the overall packet, page 2 of the debt structure. So I'm just making sure I'm reading this right. So we have on the right, we have the total. Is that the total we are servicing each year?
That's your total interest and principal payments each year.
Okay, so how much leeway do we have? Because I know this is pretty well-structured debt. Like some of it I don't know that we would be able to basically beat maturity on it, but some of it you could. I mean, did this account for we are attempting to move more pennies back toward debt service this year and next year, or is this holding it current?
This is how it is if we don't call any of the debt. If you go to the bottom, it'll tell you the earliest call dates for the 2015 series. The earliest call date is 2024. And I think I've talked to a couple of the commissioners, and I believe you too, Matt. Is it the best way to do it if you do a call? There's 2 ways. A lot of people, you can call it in if rates are cheaper, reissue bonds, and if there's a savings. You can also, we can put extra money into debt service, and then when the call dates, arrive, then what we can do, I can work with somebody like a bond counsel to make sure we call them properly, and we can call the bonds in.
The thing is, putting that, there's a double-edged sword to try to call this, or I mean, that, to be fair to the previous commission here, this debt was bonded at historically low rates we're unlikely to ever get again. So calling it early, I'm not sure how much.
It'd be a gift to the bondholder.
It's deceitful here, and this is why. Not 100% what you think, because let's think about the 2015, for instance. You got a 2.86 rate all in, but we issued that bond at a significant premium. So when you do premiums, you pay back less, so it lowers the yield. So the actual face of those bonds, several of them are at 5%. So they're not what you think. They're not at 2.86. They're 5% you're paying a year. But that's because you got all this extra money up front. So for instance, we may have issued a $100 million bond, but we may have got a $10 or $15 million premium on it. So we only ended up paying 90 back. So that lowers your all true and interest yield, but still those faces may be 5%. And I believe, why I say that, I believe the face on the 2024 one is 5%. Some of the others are lower, and I'd have to pull them. I don't have them with me, but
The flip side of that is what I'm really trying to figure out here is how to keep everybody paid with, reasonable. The vast majority of our expenditures outside of schools goes to salary, and trying to figure out how to keep people paid with reasonable cost of living increases year over year, but not tip into a negative spend situation. And so when you've got this kind of debt that is really sitting at a low interest rate, if we do this right, we're going to at some juncture end up with pennies that will appear to be extra. But I don't, and this is going to get me excoriated, but like if you try to go back and give an early tax cut, you're just going to have to turn it right around 2 or 4 years later. So how to burn this off right is vexing.
here's what you've got going on with your stuff. Your property tax, your will tax, all your court fees don't capture inflation.
Right.
So the best used to stopping a tax rate for the longest amount of time, and the same time, provide decent raises and services to the county, like a fast EMS response, better roads, would be actually used, if you didn't have to issue any debt, to actually use these to burn back into operation.
Yeah, that's kind of right. That's right.
And if you
But
don't
burn
need,
it over time,
Right.
not big chunks.
and then you got to think about something else. If you're going to need to do something, and this has been done historically, say you have a $3 million project, or $5 million project, a lot of counties will borrow a lot of funds like that. If you've got extra here and you put an extra $3 million over your capital fund for 3 years, you can pick up $9 million.
Right.
Instead of borrowing.
Right.
That's another good use for the funds.
That's
but,
right.
But you had a really good point. On average, if we exclude the ARPA, we've had about 74.56% of the general fund is salaries. Now, right now, it's lower on my projections because, we've got $10 million for, I believe it's water lines, and $5 million. So that skews your numbers, those ARPA years. And then this year, we have a little more money in for the 23 is lower too, because you have the money for this 386 overpass in that number.
Well, but I do acknowledge what you just said about the capital projects too, right? I mean, because there are some capital projects that, as opposed to getting bonded debt, we, that in the interim period that could, we could give some assistance to.
That's how the infrastructure was built for the county-wide, communications network, all the
Right.
towers.
Right.
And then also that's how part of the schools was paid and the courthouse was paid
Yeah.
cash. There was several $1 million on several of those.
Yeah.
And that's been the historic thing. If there's extra debt service, because there's a rule in debt service, you really shouldn't have more than 13 months of interest and principal in your debt service fund, because these bonds, for instance, when the county issues these bonds, in most instances, the earnings are exempt, or your interest earnings are exempt to the buyer. so they're taxes and bonds. So there's a lot of arbitrage rules, so we don't really want to build those up for unforeseeable. Now, if we were going to call a bunch of bonds, we could put extra in there, and we had a plan.
Right.
But otherwise, we really shouldn't. It puts us in a risk of affecting our arbitrage on some of our other bonds.
I mean, I guess strategically, the top level, what the picture that I'm seeing is that our spend trajectory is, over the last 2 years, has tilted way high. But part of that is, a lot of that has just straight up come from the SROs, which is understandable.
And in ARPA recently.
And ARPA.
The most recent years is ARPA too.
Which we can flatten that and will flatten that.
But you also got the ARPA stuff like the water lines, the
Well, that's
broadband, and that 386 bypasses really keep your trends up too. Now, I pulled the 386 out of the trend because we could capture it pretty easily.
Right. But
It's not in that
on the
trend.
plus side is, assuming we don't take on any more debt, which I, issue any more bonds, which I think that would be a hard case for people to make right now. This will burn down over time and will give us some amount of steady additional pennies that we can put toward general operations or capital projects.
That can alleviate.
Yeah, is it-
that.
Yeah, that's.
Help alleviate between, adjusting your spend trajectory,
Yeah.
and say you put another
To Matt's, yeah,
good hit
there's,
here for, I don't know, 10%.
it's showing there's
Change a lot.
$15 million here by 2025. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Let me go back to you.
Of debt service savings?
Yes and no. This year, they took about $3 million of that savings out for two things. One, to get rid of half of these COVID-19 payments and to open up the new courthouse. So you're looking at this year, the difference between the 36 and the 31 is about 5, so you've got about, $2 million of
Two
that
left.
left. And then you're gonna have 10 million drop off the next year, which would make you about 12 million a year.
But that's gonna be burned down, that 10 million, I think, will be used year over year.
Well, you've got the second half of those COVID payments
Yeah,
too.
that's
You may
right.
wanna pull another one
That's
over to
right.
deal with those recurring COVIDs.
That's right. And, and this is just us talking, like, we've still got, we actually have to assess everybody else's budgets, which I know are gonna come in higher, and we gotta figure those out.
That's why when you do, look at the tool, but when you do the budget this year, we can what we'll do is put the budget in, the percentage of spend on it, it'll change all these numbers to see where we think we'll be in the future. Because 23 actually took the high average of spend per budget to come up with its estimated versus trend, because it's a little different. Because the budgets were changing all over the place, and some of those we used actual 100%, like we know 386 was 100% spent out, so it shows 100% expenditures. And some were zero because we knew a bunch of COVID money got moved over into the next year, so. These are adjusted trends, highly adjusted for everything I know about.
So, highway superintendent and county mayor both said that they don't want you to pay for the next 4 years, so, that'll help us out too, right there, right?
Sure.
That'll make up
That'll make
$8
up a little
million.
bit.
$8 million.
Thank you, John.
Just name a road after me.
Appreciate it. New road.
That'd be a good way to raise some money. Can we do that? Auction off road names?
Auction off road names.
New revenue source?
Oh, man.
Anybody have any additional questions on the debt?
No, I appreciate it.
Jimmy, go to item B. That was where you just wanted an update on our implementation, where we're at on different things.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
awesome.
If you look at the 2012 Act, it should consolidate all your payroll into electronic, receipting as much as possible in all the highway. Right now, I'll tell you where we're at on everything and kind of where we've run into roadblocks and where we're kind of stopped. The ERP itself, we've got all the financial portions, which is AP and stuff for the general fund and everybody, and actually highway. We've actually got the Chronos system, and we actually put in payroll for the ERP system with the new Munis system in January. It's been running since January. It runs really well. We're still refining it. We also put in the employee self-service. Okay. We've done the Chronos system, and these are the departments we've got in right now, and we have 13 different, I think it's 13 different personnel policies, which is a problem on its own, and several variations within the personnel policies based on these departments. So I'm going to read you off the Chronos departments that we've implemented at this point and tell you the ones that are left. We've implemented EMS and sheriff, which is your two largest. Then we've done finance, legal, mayor, trustee has started, IT, ECD, EMA, codes, archives, planning, HR, and veterans has been done. The remaining departments that need to come into Kronos per the 12 Act and is highway, ECC, county clerk, assessor of property, ag extension, circuit, clerk and master, library, health, register, and election. Where we've run into it right now, where we've implemented the employee self-service, the payroll, and these in Kronos, we need to slow down at this point with our current staff and actually update all of our standard operating procedures and cross-train all the employees. Because my opinion is if we keep moving at this speed without additional staffing, and I wouldn't recommend additional staffing, you won't need them after the implementation. If we're not cross-trained and have all of our standard operating procedures updated and keep moving forward, we're going to end up with a potential problem or disaster. That's my concern. So my recommendation is
Last part again?
a potential disaster. No,
Yeah.
if we don't cross-train everybody and an employee that helped implement
good
it.
change
In
management
other words, if I
program.
have the employee, like the payroll manager worked a lot on Kronos and Munis to implement it, if this employee don't cross-train and we get our standard and they quit, or something happens to them, then we've got issues. And also we need to start poking holes in through our standard operating procedures, looking for any problems where people can try to steal stuff. We've done that already, but we'll dig further into it. So we really need to update our standard operating procedures from the old system to the new system. And that's quite time consuming. The thing that's hit us is we've kind of moved around staff because, and it's not nothing to do with our current IT, but we've actually picked up several things that slowed us down. IT was initially going to do all the security for the ERP system, but we ran into several issues there. They had a project manager that made several changes, and audit had several issues with it. So when the former county mayor was here, we decided it was best to pull those, especially since it says it's maintained in my office anyway, the 12 Act does. We decided to pull the security back into finance and make all the changes back because audit had some issues. And then also one of the reasons we're not done with the standard operating procedures of the cross-training is there was 2 project managers that were supposed to help implement the Kronos and Munis, but we actually, I guess for the best word, shuffled our staff around and actually implemented those ourselves. So that's kind of why we're behind right now. And not saying the 2 project managers didn't work out, IT terminated them and turned them into support staff, so we've absorbed it internally. But what it has done is it significantly slowed us down on the implementation. And my recommendation is right now, before we pull anything else in, that we actually update everything, and then at that point start pulling in the rest of the Kronos, purchasing, POs, and then probably miscellaneous receiving also for some of these offices that have manual receipts. Does anybody have any questions of where we're currently at, or why I think that we should really slow down at this point until we get everything updated? And we've moved a whole big direction from paper to all those are, some 2 of them had old systems and the rest of these were all paper to actually electronic. And actually moved from an old payroll system to an actual ERP system in January. So.
John, are you seeing any efficiencies with these new systems, or is change management really a big issue that you're seeing?
Well, I think once we see full implementation, I think it'd be much better, especially, what he just mentioned with the paper. That's a big deal, because you spend time trying to deliver all the papers and staff goes to pick them up, so. Yeah, I think that's a great efficiency.
And then John asked us about a particular employee today, and we can pull it right off of Kronos. I got that for you.
Yeah.
Versus digging through old time sheets and going down, we could see what leave they've used, when they were there, what happened. We can even see the time stamps, and the system itself is actually capable of even doing geofences if we want to let more people can log in. But right now, we're using parts of the system, the parts we've got implemented.
I know I spent a lot of time doing time sheets as assessor, so I know cutting that out will save a lot of time.
And we've had 3 departments, I think, the libraries, ECC, circuit, clerk and master, and a couple other ones actually asked us to be first in line. So as soon as we're ready, and elections is 1 and 2.
Okay.
As soon as we are got our SOPs and everything updated and the budget down the road, we're planning to start grabbing the rest of them on Kronos as quickly as we can.
Would it be possible to get I don't remember the exact name of the chart, but I'm picturing it here, like, it's calendar, right? And you've got implementation dates of each of these and kind of the extension of the timeline, just to kind of see when,
We think we can hit it. Yeah, we can work one
like,
out.
what one would look like.
To be honest, we had a timeline now we were planning to.
Timeline.
Yeah,
that's
we
probably
had a
right.
timeline we were planning to hit the Kronos ones right now, like actually this time, but looking at our SOPs and where we're at, and where we've had to allocate staff for, security in the ERP system and the implementation, we've kind of stopped on that timeline at this point.
Yeah.
Right now, we would like to see where we get the full the standard operating procedures all updated, because I think that, and usually where I've seen problems when I audited a lot was lack of good standard operating procedures or cross trainings or good segregations, my feeling is right now, if we keep moving forward, we could probably move forward, but it wouldn't be as orderly as it should be, or as good as it should be.
Gotcha.
Just like right now, we are probably, before we go forward on EMS, we need to restructure part of their stuff too. Because when we start working and stuff, we find efficiencies and changes that need to be made. Because they use something called, what is it called? Telestaff, and we've actually been helping them with it. They actually have a advanced timekeeping system, and since, what was the name of the guy that left, Jessica?
Greg Miller.
No, before Greg.
Keith Douglas.
No. The assistant over there, the one that, Sam.
Oh,
Sam was their
Mark.
assistant, he did all their telestaff, so we've been trying to help them with that since then, and it really, I've been watching a lot more employees in EMS and finance need to be trained on the telestaff software too, before we keep moving forward. But does anybody have any additional questions?
No, I appreciate the update. ERP systems, time systems, they're complex beasts, and you saying change management was the biggest, hardest part. I mean, you've got inertia with an organization that this is how I do my job, and then you got to learn this new thing, but then you still got to do the old thing, and then the new thing, and then
It's
how
not
do
their
you
primary concern.
how do you get enough momentum to the new thing that the new thing is now the thing? So
Now several people want it, especially ECC, they want it as soon as we can because it's gonna help them.
okay,
Because they've watched we're using it successfully in several departments, and the two largest departments right now, which would be number one sheriff and sheriff jail, and EMS are completely under the Chrono system and have been for a while now.
that's great. Yeah, share the success stories with everybody. That's usually a big motivator for.
And we're still refining them, finding things that we can refine and make better in it, and that's what we're hoping. But it would start with, everybody didn't want to do it. Now we have several departments wanting to do it. They're kind of waiting for us is where we're at right now. Instead of the other way.
All right, we got our private act stuff out of the way here. Everybody good on that one? Were there any other major private act things that kind of were going on there?
There's several implementation, and the committee's supposed to have an update, which I think that suffices. And then as far as how you're moving forward, it's supposed to be recommended by the subcommittee, and then this committee can take the subcommittee's recommendations or go their own way.
Okay.
But really, the process should be, it kind of goes up to the subcommittee, and after budget, I foresee that probably the subcommittee, I'll be wanting to send a whole bunch of new policy updates. I've sent you a few, but
Okay.
when me and you were talking, there's a whole list, so as soon as we can get budget into the approval process, and that's probably the best time for us to start hitting policy.
Okay, yeah, we can table.
Hitting policy heavy, I mean, there's at least 4, 5, or 6 policies I think that need to be updated at this point.
Good deal. All right, moving along here. Hopefully we can finish in 15 minutes, so.
I think I can if I can talk faster if you need me to, but,
You talk fast, though. We gotta be able to.
Keep up.
tell me too fast or too slow and I can go either direction. The first 2 items is, our new road superintendent came in and let's put this, the highway department the former highway department did a odd date for when their bids expired. And right now, we've not implemented the bidding and the PO portion, so they're still doing their own stuff. So basically, they sent over a request for payment, and we go, hey, where's your bid? And then they found out on the first one, it's expired. And then the second one, Toby found out he had a whole other large group of bids expiring, and I recommended that he go ahead and get a PO before they expired. He did on all of them but one, and I think it was just a basic accidental oversight. So
Well-
kind of where we're on the February 1 one. I think they just accidentally missed that one. but-
That's a good description, but I will say, in past years, 20 years ago, I've bid on these same projects. And it has always been a 12-month yearly project, and for whatever reason, this year it was a 10-month.
And they've always been 12 here, so.
And so, whatever, but, we did catch some of them at the tail end, we just didn't catch them all, and if there's anybody to blame, it's me. And I just never thought of it being short, the contract short, and it never has in years, so.
So were these two, the Old Castle and the
Right.
Stone, are those just basically trying to finish up the last 2 months worth of
Yeah.
materials.
Yeah, we were in the process of buying some pipe. We were putting in tile on roadways, and like I've told y'all in the past, in the wintertime, we're going out getting some of the first stages of what we do is widening roads and putting new tiles in and replacing old tiles. We trim the trees back, and so everything we're doing in the wintertime is getting roads ready, so when we come out in the spring, like right now, we're paving them. So the tile has to sit for a couple months and all the settling effect go through to where once everything is compacted and in good shape, we can put the binder in, and then we're ready to repave the road. And so the tiles, we do a lot of tile replacement, and we do it all year, but a lot in the wintertime when we're getting ready for spring. So it was some tile that we had bought in anticipation of replacing several roads. Had 7, 8 tiles per road.
What I'm requesting is for the committee to approve for me to go, we went ahead and paid one, but to go ahead and pay both of them. Because he's already received the product, it was a honest oversight. I'm just making you aware because audit may or may not give the county an audit finding, I don't know, because of the bid statutes, but I'm just asking you to approve to go ahead and pay it because we've actually received the product and it's in probably roads and bridges.
Would this group approve pay or would budget? Sorry.
It would be this one when it's usually something like this.
And the thing is that we have rebid all of these items, so it's like 6, and they're already bid out for the year. It's a 12-month contract.
Got it. So
this
we
won't ever-
solved the problem.
It will never happen again.
So,
And the thing is, they're bidding their own, or we would have flagged him, so when we received him, we just asked, there was no, as I'm saying, it was an honest oversight because he was planning on a 12-year bid, 12-month bid, and we've not generally seen anything but 12-month bids neither. I don't know why they did it the way they did it this year.
so 2 questions. If when we approve, then the audit issues kind of go away because we've got some oversight on it, or we still have potential audit issues?
I think right now is, eventually we'll be doing the bidding and stuff if we do it, but we're not ready. I think one is, we've got to pay them because, my point, we've received the product. It's going to be a hard argument.
Well, it
It
looks
may or
like
may
there's a
not
bid
fix
in
it.
here too that
We bid them after.
Scotty's still is the best. It's
But
kind of,
the problem is we missed the bid and it's over 20. Generally, the statute says if it's, unless there's some exclusions, for emergencies or
Yeah.
sole providers or professional services, but generally, anything of like purchases over $25,000 a year, we've got to competitively do a sealed bid on them. These already had like 36 or 30,000 and probably 30,000 more. And we just missed
The
it.
money-
I move to approve.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, good deal.
Is that for both of them?
That was for,
For C?
Yeah, it's both.
that was for both.
All right.
The other 2 items are 2 items. One is, it was an
Move to
emergency.
approve.
Okay. It was just, we've had a lot of new staff, the mayor's got new staff. There's a policy for overages on your PO, and there's a policy for emergency purchases, and the first one, I believe, was for an emergency purchase, and they failed to get a PO after the fact, because if you have an emergency purchase, you can get one after the fact. It was just an oversight, but it was actually allowed expenditure. The second item is they went more than 25% over
Genesis.
that.
Is this for the jail roof? I
Yes.
move to approve that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes.
What about the Lowe's one? It's over, is that 3 too?
The Lowe's one, my guys just did not keep up as well as they should with the costing incurred, so we did not put in a change order to change the PO. So I got on to them for that, and it is what it is. So this is work that they did.
And I can tell you, it wasn't a huge amount over. The allowed overage was $3,819. I'm sorry, the maximum it could have been without a change order was $34.37 because it could be up to 25% over. They ended up just going $38.19, so they went over by $400. So it wasn't a huge amount either.
There was money in the budget to cover it, so.
So there's no, what is it? Okay, I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes.
And item E is just purchase order exceptions. I'm allowed to approve 2 a year. If you notice, there is and it's not clear in the policy, like, I did one for the old mayor and the new mayor, but the way it reads is I'll approve those and then just present them to the committee after, but generally I ask the committee to approve them to make sure they at least agree with what I did. If they don't, then we'll look at them any further.
So. So you didn't know you needed a PO for, what's this first one for?
That was for
Page
a,
90 Page 94?
I'd used
It's the last page.
There we go.
I'd used my card. for a
Was that
truck.
before you?
For a
Yeah.
truck?
No, trailer.
Trailer.
Well, this was back to that P card
Well,
issue where
yeah.
we got to update the policy.
And
on
so
that,
I thought anything under 10,000.
Which I think was kind of what the policy
Yeah.
was.
Well,
There
he
was
bought
policy
through the
confusion.
county's policy. The county's policy's 5 for that or that. But see, Toby's got his own PO for most systems, but if he goes through our general fund, like for the ARPA, or through the capital, he gets a PO, so that was his
This
first.
is on, some of that's on.
So that was his first
the
time to go
subcommittee,
around on
right?
it, so,
Isn't this part of the subcommittee too?
No,
Like
there
P,
wasn't no
came
change.
with P cards?
well, it was, but it wasn't nothing to do related to this.
Oh, wasn't this?
But basically, Toby generally don't do them under our system, so it was his first time, and he just missed the dog and forgot it. And then the mayor was the old one and the new one, and then EMA had one, but under the policy, I can grant them one each.
The first one. to me.
Huh?
Oh, then I got the explanation. The first one was the one that stood out.
Well, I sat there and I was looking, we're trying to get a tilt trailer and we had looked everywhere and they had it in Greenbrier and it was under 10,000 and it was like a $2,000 or $3,000 savings for what it was and I just jumped on it because it was fixing to go. And I'm sitting there and of course I started asking, I said, under 10's good, right? And,
And yours is actually 25 for highway.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so you're good under bid for 25 is
I
probably what I was
moved the
thinking
group
about.
approve.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed?
Motion
I
to
didn't-
adjourn?
Oh, no, we got to vote on
Oh,
vice
wait,
chair real quick.
Vice
Oh.
chair, sorry.
So,
Forgot about vice chair.
I would nominate Ben Harris.
I second.
I'll second that if Bill will accept it.
would you like the honor then?
There you go.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
There you go.
Motion, I think you had something you wanted to motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Calling that was all the,
Turn
was it that
things off
retirement
real quick.
party and the travel.